We wanted to close the day with this factual description of what really is the report submitted to the Secretary General, and to focus on this issue of the transformative shift. And I am going to explain what this is to you, I hope, in a very succinct way. But before I do so, let me just tell you that UNITAR has been tasked less than 2 weeks ago by the Secretary General to begin a series of capacity building activities, workshops, seminars, and so on and so forth, only for government officials from member states. So I cannot find a better way to say these things, so as to ensure that they are up to the level of the discussion. Of course, the actual instruction is modeled in a different way, but that's exactly the order that we have gotten. That we have made sure that whoever is participating in this thing actually understand what is it that we are trying to create. And that's not an easy task, because as you understand, some people get elected or appointed because of reasons that are not necessarily the capability that they have. Maybe they are good decision makers, maybe they do represent constituency and so on, but not necessarily because of the level that they have to understand social sciences and environmental sciences and so on. So UNITAR will be working on this thing in the next 1.5 years, and I'm sure the University of Reims will be invited to help us. So on 13 May, 2 weeks ago or so, the Secretary General received a report, as you can see in the picture, from the hands of the President of Indonesia, one of the 3 co-chairs of the panel. He said the world has an historic opportunity to eradicate extreme poverty and achieve sustainability and equality for all through the new post-2015 development agenda, launching the report outlining the new framework. We are at the beginning of a historic journey, he said. The objectives were to build on the 8 MDGs and then to formulate recommendations on the development agenda beyond 2015. You are going to see at the end of this short presentation that I'm extracting from the report the correlation between what has been suggested and what was before, to see where there is some matching and when there is none. The high-level panel, the special representative of Monrovia, mentioned that our vision and our responsibility are to end extreme poverty in all its forms in the context of sustainable development, and to have in place the building blocks of sustained prosperity for all. The destination we expect to arrive to in 2030 is a world that is more equal, more prosperous, more peaceful, more just, a world where development is actually sustainable. We found this number, which is always shocking to me, and I decided just to put it here just as a reminder. Some of you know this better than me. The 1.2 billion poorest people account for 1% of the world consumption. The 1 billion richest people consume 72% of that. That's clear enough, I believe. Our Secretary General has really gone to great lengths to ensure that we are not repeating the mistakes of the past. And Carlos Lopez, as one of the architects at the time of the interaction with the different actors working in the design of the MDGs, actually has been very active in ensuring what you have right there, that we should begin listening and not saying, not proposing. So I'm not going to read this slide, but I just want to focus on this issue of local authorities, and I am doing that because I'm biased. If you look at the program, I manage the UNITAR program that actually built capacity at the local level. I'll just give you a number so you understand how important this is for us. It's more than 14,000 mayors, council members, governors, their staff, and so on. In the last biennium. The UN works in bienniums, as you know. And this current biennium, it will be a little more than 15,000. Each one of these people, we have to sit down with them, normally it's for 3 days to a week, and actually deliver knowledge, best practice sharing, and all these things that we do in a way that is not easy, because if you have someone that actually pays to come to a seminar, or a student, a master's student, or so in a university, these people normally want to learn, want to listen, and are humble enough to say, this is something that I don't master. I don't feel comfortable with it, so let me ask all the questions. A mayor or a governor sometimes cannot afford to do that. It looks bad. They are supposed to know that. So we have to find a way to actually empower these local authorities with the knowledge they need to do actually some decent decision making. It is a continuous process since the beginning of the millennium, and I really wanted also to focus on the fact that there are some advances. The role of media in development. We can spend days on this thing. And the responsibility of media to either exacerbate the negative side of development or to focus on sharing some good news. Normally will go to the negative side, and I don't have to explain to you why. But there you see some numbers that are important for us within the UN. Half a billion fewer people living below an international poverty line, determined at $1.25 a day. Child death rates have fallen by more than 30%, with more or less 3 million children's lives saved each year as compared to 2000. Deaths from malaria have fallen by 1/4, and so on and so forth. However, the new set of goals and targets need to finish the job that MDGs started and go beyond MDGs to fulfill the vision of promoting sustainable development. As the MDGs fell short by, and we do acknowledge this, shortcomings, not integrating the economic, social, and environmental aspects of the Millennium Declaration and not addressing the needs to promote sustainable patterns of consumption and production. There were 4 meetings in New York, London, Monrovia, and Bali, focused on getting some orientation and common ground to actually produce a report. The outcomes basically is that the panel is convinced that a new paradigm is needed. The post-2015 agenda has to be a universal agenda driven by 5 big transformational shifts, which is where I want to focus on. The new agenda should also include a framework of goals that drives transformation with full focus on quantitative targets, and also wanted is a data revolution for sustainable development with new international initiatives to improve the quality of statistics and information available to citizens. If you ask within the UN what is the main self-criticism that we impose on ourselves, is this last part. We have some numbers, we have statistics, we go to great lengths and invest a lot of money to actually try to follow the numbers, but we will always depend on the member state, the government that tell us this is what we are achieving. So if you ask us where we believe we really have to invest a lot of effort is on that, to be able to develop our own external, not even us, but someone else data sourcing. 5 transformative shifts. Number 1, move from reducing to extending extreme poverty, leaving no one behind. 2, putting sustainable development at the core of the development agenda. 3, transforming economies to drive inclusive growth. 4, building accountable institutions open to all that will ensure good governance and peaceful societies. And 5, which is the most important, the summary, if you wanted to use one sentence that will summarize this report, is the building of this global partnership that can mean everything and anything at the same time. But the whole point is that there should be a transformative shift to forge a new global partnership based on cooperation, equity, and human rights. And if you go to the report, it actually makes sense, but here we don't have the time to explain them. You can read all these things on the screen, but I really want to focus on the following. Here. My time is running out. So, what is the comparison between what we had, what has actually led the efforts of so many member states, so many governments, at all the levels in governments, and definitely within the UN. No agency of the United Nations organization was able to ignore this thing. We had to adapt our budgets, our structures, our priorities to the 8 Millennium Development Goals. So it is very important for us to understand that the proposed SDGs, and remember that this is just a draft, it's just a set of ideas, it's an invitation for a debate. So those are very basic. in the document, but still, we think that it's important to establish this correlation, if any. Before, number one, to eradicate extreme poverty and hunger. Then, we are proposing the end of poverty, at least extreme poverty, and also to ensure food security and good nutrition. If you go to the document and you read, it says 1A, to bring the number of people living on less than $1.25 a day to 0, and reduce by X percentage, and it actually says X, if you have read this thing, the share of people living below the country's 2015 national poverty line. So, remember what Carlos Lopez was saying in the morning? We are trying to fix the mistake of standardizing the goals. You cannot do that. You have to adapt this to the reality of every member state, and so on and so forth. I don't have the time to read all of it. Number two, to achieve universal primary education, then there is a corresponding SDG to provide quality education and lifelong learning that will be focused on the proportion of children able to access and complete pre-primary education as well as primary education, which was the focus before. Then, number three, to promote gender equality and empower women with the linkage with number two, to empower girls and women and achieve gender equality. 4, 5, and 6 that were related to health, all of them, hopefully, comprise in ensuring healthy life and all the details behind it. Number 7, to ensure environmental sustainability, matching with number 6 in the new proposed SDGs, to achieve universal access to water and sanitation, and number 9, to manage natural resource assets sustainability. Number 8, which was the last of the MDGs, to create a global partnership for development, match with this proposed to have a number 12, to create a global enabling environment and catalyze long-term financing. But the next slide, which is the last, is important for me, this one. To secure sustainable energy. You have debated in extenso why this was one of the big missing targets in the original MDGs. Number 8, to create jobs, sustainable livelihood, and equitable growth, to actually make it a measurable goal. Number 10, to ensure good governance and effective institutions, something that was too complicated in 2000. Because remember that the member states have to approve this thing, and when you go into the details of ensuring good governance and effective institution, there is some monitoring behind it in order to measure it that some member states are not comfortable with. And last but not least, to ensure stable and peaceful societies, which is one of the goals that I like the most, but has been already one of the early criticisms because it's very difficult to tackle, and I'll just read it and I conclude. 11A, to reduce violent death per 100,000 citizens by X percentage and eliminate all forms of violence against children. 11B, to ensure justice institutions are accessible, independent, well-resourced, and respect due process rights. 11C, to stem the external stressors that lead to conflict, including those related to organized crime. Big problem. If you look at the problems and the challenges of the future, in addition to the 3 that the speaker was mentioning in the morning, I think the issue of crime should be also added. And finally, to enhance the capacity, professionalism, and accountability of the security forces, police, and judiciary systems. So you see, the proposal is very general, but a lot more comprehensive than before. And we are happy with the report as it is. And of course, some people within the UN wouldn't say, but I guess this is why we are in this debate. We will also try to, as I said at the beginning, put the capacity where we need to have the capacity so the people that are going to decide on this actually know what they are approving or debating. Professor Mancebo, thank you very much.